Guys, you are in for a shocker on this one, at least if you haven't seen how this graphics card performs in DCS World. Yes, we're talking about the Nvidia 4090, sometimes also known as the RTX 4090 Ti, and we're going to see how this thing performs exclusively in DCS World, nothing else. We'll start with my original settings and then we'll work our way through, but let me tell you, this is going to blow your mind. Certainly did mine. Let's crack on. And we can see there the frame rate. Oh, it's 120. That's insane. That's pointless. I may as well get VSync on. Or crank up the settings. That's absolutely madness. I cannot believe. And there's the settings that a lot of people are going to be interested in. Specifically, how much memory does DCS use? Now, I know I've got 64 gig of RAM. I had 64 for a while. And I can tell you it doesn't touch anything above 32 gig. The system does. But and certain things like Adobe and whatnot, but DCS itself never did. And I can tell you, because I've got my graphics card monitor on the other screen, that GPU usage is approximately 54% right now. And so let's dive down and see how that changes. Let's compress time. Holy sh**. Alright, graphics card usage has now increased to 72%, interestingly enough. Remember in the low detailed area it was around 55. It's currently 78. That's just gorgeous. That's completely smooth, is that? And again, 120 frames a second. For me, that's wasted. It's completely smooth. I'm not even getting these little micro stutters that I used to get as I'm changing through the height, and I'm wondering, is that what that memory was about? There's a little bit of a frame drop there. I don't know if you perceived it. There was a micro stutter there. Now, what's interesting in this, it's got 24 gigs of GPU memory, but it shares 32 gigabytes. And I'm thinking, is that sharing the 32 gigabytes of system memory that just isn't being used by the game? Now, just so you know, 11.3 gigabytes of the graphics card memory is being used currently. 11.3 out of the 24. And if you want to include shared memory, that's 56 gig of memory overall. But I'm going to count it as 24 because that's the dedicated graphics memory. And again, still looks like we're locked on 120. So I think it's time to crank up the settings and I'll bring you back when I do. Alright, this time I've set both my monitors over to 4K. I've set DCS to 4K. I've kept all the other graphics settings the same. You can have a look. Although I'm still capturing in 2K on this occasion. If you take a look at what you see, you can see it's just got a portion of the corner of the screen. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is just change the size of what I'm capturing to fit the screen. There we go. But I am still in 4K. Perhaps you can tell by the size of the font. Instant thing I just noticed, tabbing in and out was instantaneous. There wasn't even like a second of a delay. It was like I tabbed and it was boom, it was right there. I know you didn't see me tab out because it was capturing the game, but I was on desktop. I tabbed in, there wasn't like a second or anything, it was boom. We'll drop an F16 down, player. Yeah, this is really small, is this text, so certainly not something for a mission editor tutorial. Right, let me run through the settings real quick. Textures high, terrain textures high, sieve traffic off, water high, vis range high, heat blur off, shadows high, secondary shadows off, resolution 3840 by 2160, so that's the 4K setup there. You've got 16:9 on the res. Monitors, just the one. The second one's got my OBS. Resolution of cockpit displays 1024. MSA is off. Depth of field is off. Lens effects, dirt and flare. Motion blur is off. Clouds ultra. SSAA off. SSLR off. SSAO is also off. Clutter grass, where you can see for yourself here. These are all dialed all the way up. Preload's radius is on 80,600. Chimney smoke density 2. Gamma is 2.2. Anisotropic filtering is 4x. I'm sure I said that wrong. Anisotropic filtering, I guess I should say, is 4x. Terrain object shadows is on default. Cockpit global illumination is off. Font scale 125. Scale GY is 1. And here, interestingly, rain droplets on, VSync off, full screen on, cursor confined to, that's not even a graphics setting, but in any case, is off. Okay, so here we go. Once again, right control, pause, and the text is going to be smaller, but I can tell you right off the bat, it feels just as smooth as it did before. Now, is the frame rate saying it still says 120? I can't believe it still says 120. Now, bearing in mind, this is the first time me playing DCS at this new resolution setting, so all the cache stuff I'm guessing is being regenerated on the fly. And you can see, generally speaking, it's maintaining 120 frames a second. Now, if I have a look on GPU usage, I've got to tab out real quick. Look at that, I'm tabbing out and it's still real smooth. It's not even focused, guys. I've got my task manager on desktop. Just let me move that over to the other window. Tab back in. Yeah, you click on the DCS, it's instantaneously there. I've never had that before. Always took like a second or two to tab back and forth. That's going to make tabbing between DCS and TAC views so much easier when I'm editing those kind of videos. Right, graphics card usage right now is 67%. And again, that's 4K capturing 2K with the settings as you've seen, 71%. Now, if I turn VSync on, I'm just wondering, is it going to... Clearly, it's going to knock my frames back to 60, but I'm just wondering, is it going to reduce GPU utilization? Because, of course, half of the frames are currently gone to waste. Like, I just can't get over how... Like, to me... Right. I'll just tell you this, I've always had the 80 series of graphics cards, and so I did have a 1060 at one point. When the first Oculus Rift came out and DCS was the only flight sim game that had VR at the time, not even the early access of X-Plane did back then. I had the 1060 graphics card, I got the VR, and the frame rate was not great. It was usable, but you had to turn all the settings down. And so I decided then and there to go for the 1080 graphics card, which I can't remember if there was a 1090, but at least at the time, I think the 1080 was the best, or at least the next best graphics card you could get. And I realized that was very important for VR. So when the 20 series came out, it was the 2080. When the 30 series come out, I got the 3080. This is the first time I've ever had a 90 series graphics card. Had they released the 4080s at the same time as the 4090s, would I have stuck with the 4080? Probably, because I think for a price versus performance kind of sliding scale, especially nearer the time of release, I just always felt for my particular price bracket, the 3080 was a better, or the 80 series rather, of graphics cards was the better price to performance ratio. That being said, there is no 4080 this time. It's the 4090 or nothing, and the 80 series not slated for release for a few months yet, if not next year. All right, so just so you can see what it actually is that I'm going to be doing here. So yeah, everything that is high. Right, save traffic. I don't like this, and it's for one very specific reason. It has nothing to do with graphics or frame rate. In fact, graphically, it looks nice to have it. It's when you're dealing with convoys as targets, if you've got save traffic on, it makes it... You can mess up and not even know it, and you're just wasting bombs on... And that's the only reason, and I do a lot of cast stuff, so that's why. Visit range. To me, this was always a massive frame rate killer, so just for now, I'm going to switch from high to ultra. We'll see what difference that makes. Heat blur, I just didn't like it because it blurred up the heads-up display. I'm guessing that issue's probably been solved now, but if my heads-up display is still blurry because a jet 2 miles in the distance has got its afterburners on, then we'll be getting rid of heat blur again right off the bat. Shadows was already on high. Secondary shadows, to me, feels a little bit pointless, but you know what? We said we were going to turn everything on. Resolution of cockpit display. Well, the only additional option here is to go 1024 every frame. So I'll activate that. I'm not going to turn VSync on because that would nullify that 120 frame rates that we've been getting. Although clearly after I've done these tests, I'm going to be playing with VSync. MSAA, and we've got off 2 and 4. When you've got such a high resolution, I don't feel like you need any sort of blurring, but I'm going to put it on ×2 just so that we've got it. But I think ×4 on a 4K setup is complete. There's no point. You've not got jaggedy lines because the resolution is so high. Depth of field. I don't like depth of field just as an effect. But just for argument's sake, let's set it to bokeh. That's, it's a nice, those of you in photography will know what that is. Lens effects, yeah, we'll leave that on. Motion blur, again, it's one that I don't like, but just for the purposes of having the effects on, we'll turn that on. Clouds Ultra, SSAA. The choice is... Doesn't seem like I know why. You can't turn that on when you've already got 4K. I think you can enable it with the lower resolutions. All right, SSLR, that I guess something to do with light ray tracing. I don't think they use the Nvidia one, but in any case. And then SSAO, we'll turn that on as well. Anesotropic filtering, well, it goes all the way to 16. Nothing new there. We'll turn that on. Terrain object shadows, obviously we've got off, flat, and default. For those that don't know the difference between that, what flat means is, say you've got a building on the side, or well, let's first of all have a building on flat ground. If the shadow is clearly going to be flat across the ground behind it, let's say that same building, same shadow is on the side of a hill. If the object shadows is set to default, that shadow is basically going to wrap itself around the side of the hill. If it's set to flat, you will literally see like the shadow stuck in 3D space if you're down low. Like it'll just be straight out as though it was on a flat surface. And in other words, flat is worse than not having them at all, unless you're just playing on a completely flat map. So yeah, this is always a case of off or default in my book, and it's been on default ever since I had the 3080. All right, cockpit global illumination. Never really could tell what this one did, so we'll turn it on. And these are just preferences here for the scale, so we'll leave those as is. Again, VSync, I'll enable that, and cursor confined to game window. Clearly, we don't need that. All right, I'm not going to bother saving these settings because I doubt I'm going to be using them, but let's have a little look what we get. And if I press Control and get the details up on screen there, I don't believe it. It's virtually 120 frame rates again. Unbelievable. By the way, guys, graphics card utilization is at 99%. I've got everything turned up and it's at 99%. I can't believe it. We've got still almost 120 frames a second. You see it's dipping down to about 110. But it's, come on, guys, 110 plus frames a second. Let's get rid of the lower bar there. You can see that bokeh effect off in the distance there in real time behind the F-16. Frame rates are now dropping below 100 for the first time. We're seeing them at around 97 there. Low to mid-90s. I gotta be honest though, guys, it doesn't feel completely smooth even though my monitor is at 60. And so I'm thinking at this point, for perception purposes, the 60 frame rates for me is probably going to appear smoother than something that's like dancing between 80 and 100. But this is absolutely maxed out. Granted, I'm solo by myself in Syria. I'm not on a server, there's no multiplayers, there's nothing going on. Clearly that's going to have big impact on the performance as well. But this was not possible before. If you remember, I did a video, I maxed everything out. It was possible on the Caucuses map, but certainly not at these frame rates. Here we are low down in a low detail area, and I was topping 100 again. Again, GPU utilization is at 93% currently, 94%. It's right up there on the... I wish I could show you the graph easily, but it's basically at 95 to 99% the entire time. It's currently dipping as I'm looking at the sky to about 60. But I'm guessing as soon as I've got scenery in the picture again, like now, yeah, there we go. 85, 99, it's at 99%. not actually seen it say 100%. Don't know if that's possible, but yeah, 99%. But you can see there, guys, this is perfectly playable. I am really blown away that it's able to maintain this frame rate at this setting. I'm going to bring OBS back onto the 4K setting, and I'll see you in a minute. Alright, so here we are in DCS 4K, capturing at 4K, absolutely everything maxed out here. The only settings that are not, SSAA is off because you cannot enable it on 4K. That's a limitation on Eagle Dynamics, so with the graphics. And MSAA, I've got it on 2x, not 4, simply because at 4K, you're not getting any jagged lines. It's so I turned 2x on just so that it was on, but again, you're not getting anything. Absolutely everything else is maxed out. And we're going to go here now direct to Beirut. So I'm going to compress time. And let's make our way. Roughly on this heading. Burners on for a bit. Let's start climbing up. Let's see what the world looks like from high up. And again, massive frame rate. Like, completely blown away how this game is. I mean, look at this. Even on, like, massive time compression. Like, it's still really smooth and we're compressing. It's absolutely insane, is this? Like, what the F? Guys, I know Nvidia gave me priority access to this for being a YouTuber, but I still had to pay for it. These thoughts are my own and genuine. That, you know, even if I had to wait for 6 months before plugging this in, I'd still be as gobsmacked versus what I had before. Right, so here we are descending into where it's busy, Beirut. And once again, you're going to have to forgive the noisy machine outside. I think they're resurfacing the road. Right, so here we are, real time at Beirut. This, I believe, is the most detailed part of any map in DCS at the moment. Look at all those buildings. Look at the frame rate, guys. It is still 90 frames a second. GPU utilization is at 99%, which I don't recall if GPU utilization was ever get that high in DCS. Perhaps somebody can let me know. But they're making use of every single core and thread that is on that processor. Of course, there's some in reserve for stuff like streaming and whatnot. But yes, I don't think there's going to be any problem in streaming in 4K on this. Now, this is absolutely insane. So let's see if we can, I know sometimes there's a debate between is it better to do it inside DCS or Nvidia. Well, I decided to do it inside DCS to begin with to see what difference. And frame rate, according to this, is still ways above 100. So I'm not sure. Is that because I've got two monitors and it's trying to keep them both at 60 frames? I do not know the answer to that. Again, DCS should only be using one of them. I also decided to fly at night here, moonlight, with everything maxed out, just to see what that looks like. And of course, we're on the Caucasus map this time. And again, just with everything maxed out, just completely, just absolutely blown away by this. Alright, so let's turn that on and just appreciate the beauty for a sec. Absolutely just wow. Look at those flares, man. Just how nice and colourful. Wow. All right, then let's have a look online. I'm going to grab my favorite servers and just go with the busiest one at the time, which appears to be Growling Sidewinder Open Conflict with 30 players. Currently down to under 10% while we're in the loading screen. And again, it is still recording in 4K, so it's not like it's 10% doing nothing. It's recording 60 frames a second at 4K. And if you do the maths on 4K 3840 by 2160, you're talking in excess of 10 million pixels 60 times every second. And all of that is being rendered and stored. All right, so as usual on GS, teams are stacked 15 to 11. Not as bad as I have seen it. I'm just going to stack even worse because I don't want to be killed, but nor am I going to kill anybody. We're just going to jump in and have a quick flight. All right, let's see if I can remember how to start this one up. Battery. All right, we did have a discussion on which engine to crank first. Some people saying right, like it says in the manual. In my experience, it makes no difference. So let's crank the left just to prove the point. Fuel in. Let's get the externals on. Uncage that. Let's get bogs on. Let's have a quick look from the outside. Well, I'll tell you what, guys. First impressions. Let's get the frame rates back on. And yeah, frame rates are still in the 70s and 80s, despite being on a server with that many players. Again, this is the busiest player at the time of me testing, busiest server at the time of me testing Growling Sidewinders with about 30. Yeah, look at that bokeh effect there. Not really bokeh, actually. It's more like a Gaussian blur. EW page, let's get that on heads up. And HSI on the left. 4 bars, 80 mile by default. That's going to do it for me. Right, let's go then. So, first impression is completely smooth despite being on multiplayer server with absolutely everything maxed out on 4K. With mirrors on, I know as well. Graphics card utilization currently at 77%. Frame rate, as you can see, no longer doing 100. But yeah, to all intents and purposes, is completely smooth. As I'm turning my head, it's like no noticeable stutter at all. A couple of very minor stutters. Where were they? Right, somewhere like when I'm looking in that direction, there seems to be this micro stutter. But again, you got to really look for it. It's like you got to really try and pick fault, is what I'm saying. Alright, let's start rotating. Wheels up. Flaps up. Let's do a roll. There you go, man. Everything maxed out. On the Growling Sidewinder server. The busiest server on DCS at the time of me making this video. You can see there the bokeh effect, the lighting. Actually, that lighting looks gorgeous. Look at the lighting on the aircraft, the way the light and the shadow. Absolutely gorgeous. I wonder if it's worth keeping that secondary shadow thing then. It looks insane. Certainly want to get rid of the bokeh and the motion blur. But I mean, yeah, look at that. I know it's very small. I'll try and enlarge it for a bit, but look at the frame rate up there in the corner. Wow. Sometimes I'm noticing a slight choppiness, even though the frame rate is apparently high. So it may be an amalgamation of both monitors. I don't know. Again, I've got VSync on, so in theory, it shouldn't be going above 60. Wow, look at that sunlight reflection just there. Did you see it? It was not just a solitary light. It was like, wow. That looks gorgeous. Whoever got that bump map reflectivity thing looking like that, wow. Absolutely wow. probably going to end up getting killed by a missile that I don't even realise is incoming, but hey, what's new, right? We're just here to take a look at the frame rates, and so apology. We did pick the stronger team deliberately so we wouldn't be missed. Wow. Those reflections are absolutely gorgeous. Let me try and zoom in a little bit on those for you. That is incredible. That is incredible. Like, again, I wanted to record my first time playing this so you caught my reactions to what I'm seeing in the way that I genuinely feel. I mean, look at the reflections down the canopy with a slightly different color effect. Again, if you're watching this on mobile, you're not going to be able to appreciate some of the finer detail. And if you are seeing it on a computer or on a tablet, make sure you're watching it at 4K, if at all possible, or the highest resolution you can. Granted, I know some of the phones are 4K, and those of you that are still young with super eyes, you may be able to appreciate it, but just wow. There you can see some of that reflection of the aircraft. You see some of the red. Let me try and get a better position. So just have a look here. Some of the red reflecting. Again, that's one of those advanced graphics options that kills frame rate. But do you know what? We can finally play DCS Maxed out. I made that video, what, about 6 months ago, saying it was a ways off being able to play Maxed out. I had no idea that 6 months later we'd be there. No idea at all. And again, this is not solo single player. This is online on the busiest server that there is at the time of me filming this, with 30 players. Me making 31. Everything maxed out. 4K. Recording 4K. 60 frames a second. I'm absolutely blown away. GPU utilization, by the way, is averaging about 75 to 80%. Interesting that GPU utilization is lower on the online servers than solo. To me, that suggests there's more of a bottleneck at some other parts of the system, because clearly we're not experiencing the same frame rates we were before. I'll post my system spec in the description below for those that are interested, but generally speaking, guys, wow. Absolutely wow. Do I recommend the 4090 for those of you that are maybe considering it? Well, if you've got, like me, the 3080, or certainly if you've got anything less than that, absolutely. If you've got the 3090, well, I can't say. I never had one of those. You'll have to try and replicate what you see me doing and see what your frame rate look like. Bearing in mind I am recording as well, so it's not just playing by solo. So clearly, if you were playing by solo, I imagined the performance is going to be slightly better still. Wow. Absolutely wow. Absolutely insane. I gotta say that stutter that you get between low and high, it's still there, but it's vastly less noticeable. It's like the time of the stutter it's more than cut in half. It's like a third of the length that it used to be. And again, it doesn't happen absolutely every time you change height, but that's when it does happen. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen then. There it is, tiny little micro stutter. Let me try and keep looking out the side. See if you can notice when that micro stutter takes place. It's a known issue with DCS. I know they're working on it and people complain about it often enough. It was far more noticeable on the 3080, let me tell you. Right, so guys, as we get to the end of this video, do keep your suggestions coming in. I made a post earlier asking if you've got any ideas on things you'd like to see. Please do leave them in the comments. I will make one more video showcasing this graphics card and include as many of those as I can. And if it was you on the grounding Sidewinder that is about to kill me in the red F-18 that was flying around with its afterburner on, seemingly randomly doing nothing, well, let us know as well. And thank you very much for taking part in the video, albeit unwittingly. In fact, you know what? I don't even have Fox 3s. Fancy that. Don't even have the missiles my channel is named after. Well, we've got 2 mics and we've got 2 Sparrows. Fox 1. Missiles incoming. Here we go. And there we go. Game over. Thank you very much to whoever killed me. That makes a nice end to a fantastic video. You can maybe guess what I'm going to go and do now. And let's not also forget that this is an expensive graphics card and it's also very difficult to get hold of. Nvidia were offering creators the opportunity to get priority access to this as well. So let's leave out the can't get hold of one and what they cost and you know, we know it sucks. It is what it is. If you find that you have been given priority access but you're not interested or you're unable to buy one at this time, well, maybe consider being nice and donating that to somebody that has the money and really wants one and just isn't on the list. I mean, you don't gotta. I mean, it's just something nice you might want to do. And so until next time, wherever in the world you may be, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Take care. Bye-bye. And that's it from me, hanging out somewhere in the Central Caucasus region.